Hello again, and welcome back to another edition of the Wiccan Conservative. So I've been working on this video for 2 days, and I wanted to cover so much stuff, and I just didn't know if I was going to get it all in. So the first thing I wanted to do was kind of show you guys what I do when I'm not creating YouTube content. I know that I'm very flaky and I come and go, and it's very hard to get regular content out of me, and I apologize for that. But as you guys all know, small YouTube creators, we don't have the backing, we don't have the monetary funds, and I just don't have the time to consistently create content for you guys all the time. So I apologize sincerely for that. And I'm so thankful for everybody that sticks around for the videos and wants to actually listen to what I have to say. So today's video is titled Elections Have Consequences, because they do. And the screen that you're going to be following the most may or may not match up exactly with what I am saying at the time. I really wanted this to be a visual and a personal video for you guys to get everybody reconnected with me, to reconnect everybody with the channel, and to educate you guys. So right now I am in the middle of a Facebook dispute for calling Americans uneducated and stating that the reason that they have the ideas that they have when it comes to how the government should function is because they are improperly educated about the role of government. So Facebook flagged my comment, and I never knew there was a Facebook overview review board, or whatever they call themselves. So I went ahead through the process, and we're going to continue fighting Facebook and tech censorship. But as you guys know, that is not the meat and potatoes of this video. Sorry, that's a bug. But the meat and potatoes of this video is going to deal a lot with the coronavirus, of course, because we have Joe Biden as an acting president at this point in time. And his first, I guess, it's like 90 days in office now. I don't think he's reached 100 yet, but it's been executive order city. So whenever it came down to the mass shootings that have happened, Joe Biden's approach was no different. His idea is to instate an executive order. So let's take a look at what this executive order actually wants to accomplish and why these things are absolutely impossible. And some of these things are already done, and some of these things are completely unconstitutional. Without further ado, let's go into the first claim that the Biden administration wants to executive order out of existence, and that is the boyfriend loophole, or the stalker loophole, where if you are convicted of stalking or being a domestic abuser, somehow you can still get a gun. So with that being said, whenever I purchase a gun here in Georgia, they do a background check immediately on me wherever I go to purchase my gun. And if there's something that comes up in the background check, I have a clean background, thankfully. So I would assume that if you were in the middle of a court proceeding or something to that effect, that would already be flagged, that would already come up. And I know many people have talked about this. I'm not 100% sure of all the gun laws in all the states, but that kind of sounds like it's already been done, Joe. So why are we worried about an executive order for a boyfriend loophole when that loophole really doesn't exist if you have a background check to begin with? And I know that they've also made claims that you don't have to get background checks at the gun shows. I've never been to a gun show, but people who have been to gun shows state that they also are subject to background checks at the gun shows, which those people have to get permits. They have to, spend money on the space to be there. So it really doesn't make sense to think that they wouldn't have to go for a background check if that's the law of the state. But I digress, because a lot of liberals don't follow the laws themselves. So why would they think that anybody else would follow the law? And I think that's where their mentality is. Number two on Joe's EO list would be to ban high capacity magazines. Now, with that being said, the big argument is you don't need 100 rounds to hunt, and you don't need, 30 rounds in a clip, and you don't need XYZ. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter if you go out and purchase, say the magazine capacity is downsized to 10 rounds in a magazine. If you go out and buy 20 different magazines, then you still have the same amount of ammo. You still can have the flawless, seamless, kind of reload scenario without having a high capacity magazine. So the high capacity, I don't understand where that even comes from. The weapons that I own are standard magazines. I don't think that they're high capacity or particularly large ammo quantities in the guns. I've never seen a high capacity rifle. I know that they're out there, but how many people are actually playing Rambo in their backyards? Most of the guns that are actually used in these mass shootings are not your semi or fully automatic weapons. They're not coming in and just spraying like they do in Call of Duty and running away. They're handguns, they're AR-15s in some cases. They're many different guns and weapons that are being used in these crimes. The capacity really shouldn't make a difference. Number three on Joe's EO list would be to repeal liability immunity for gun manufacturers. So that would mean that a gun manufacturer could be held responsible for what was done with the gun after it left the store. So if you I mean, let's put this in grade school terms. If you go out and buy a pair of tennis shoes and you end up stomping somebody to death, are you going to sue Skechers for selling you the pair of tennis shoes that made it accessible for you to stomp somebody to death? I would hope not, but we have come to this point in society where people are actually asking for these things and asking for somebody to hold another person responsible for a product that they produce. Number four on Joe Biden's EO list would be to invest in evidence-based community violence intervention. This one just kind of made me bang my head off the wall, because if we had evidence-based community violence intervention, I think that would be the crime watches. I think that would be the local citizens. I think that would be the people who are watching out for their neighborhoods, who you told through the Ahmaud Arbery case you don't want them doing those things. You don't want them to look out for their community or pay attention to what's going on in their community, because now they are on the verge of being criminals for stepping in and intervening. So, Joe, I'm kind of confused where you want this evidence to come from. How do you get evidence if you're telling people that they have no business bothering a jogger that they've never seen in their community before? Well, how then do you know that he's not there scoping out to commit violence, other than to confront him and find that evidence that you're looking for, Joe, to come up with this community violence intervention plan that you want to executive order into existence? Number five is the red flag gun laws. We've talked about this before. When the militia went up last year to Virginia, when the red flag laws started coming into play in the surrounding states around Georgia. And we've talked in length as to how unconstitutional it is to process a crime that hasn't even happened yet. I know that we have conspiracy charges in this country, but conspiracy is based on facts. So you usually get hit with a conspiracy charge when it's evident that you put thought behind the criminal act that you committed. I got hit with a conspiracy charge when I was younger. We had paraphernalia in the vehicles that led the officers to believe that we had planned our actions before we went out and committed them, and in fact we did. So that's a conspiracy charge. They were able to gather the evidence from the scene and say, you didn't just come out here, it wasn't a crime of the moment, you put thought into it and you went ahead and put that thought into action. So that's what the conspiracy charge is. But in a red flag law, you can have neighbors, you can have an ex-boyfriend. Let's go back to the boyfriend loophole here, or the girlfriend loophole, because you girls are just as crazy out there, so I'm not going to be sexist here. So if there is a crazy significant other, or if you're having an issue with your neighbor next door and they don't like you, they can call and make a claim that you are unsafe, that you're acting unsafe, or that you're threatening them, and they're going to come and take your guns first, and they're going to ask questions later. So it completely reverses the due process that we are afforded here in this country, whereas you are presumed guilty and then have to prove your innocence in order to get your guns back. Now, in theory, any humanitarian is going to say, but if we can prevent, I understand that, but there are ways to prevent without infringing upon people's constitutional rights. So the last thing that Joe Biden wants to EO is the ghost guns. Now, like I said, I am not going to sit here and claim that I am some crazy militant that knows all these things about guns and I know the right words and verbiage to say, and I'm not exactly sure what a ghost gun is. But through a little bit of research, I've realized that there are pieces of, mechanics of guns that you can purchase and actually assemble guns at home. And I've watched YouTube videos where you can make homemade weapons and, actually buy different gun parts and modify the weapons that already exist in your home. So to Joe and his base, this is the most scary, dangerous thing is that we can actually concoct weapons in our homes. They aren't registered. You don't have to have a background check, and they're completely unmonitored. But in the same respect, it's not just guns that you have to worry about. So I don't know how familiar you guys are. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Anarchist Cookbook. I've known about this probably since I was in middle school. As a matter of fact, it was one of those things where as a kid, you hear about it and then you go research it. And what it is it's just a book of, kind of like tactical survival and how to makeshift homemade weapons with things that you might already have around the house. So when you walk into Lowe's and there are people buying fertilizer and there are people buying different, chemicals for their lawns and things like that. You do know that those are things used to make bombs, Joe, right? And you don't have to walk into Lowe's and show your ID for fertilizer and, you can get free access to the internet. And with the VPNs that are out there, there's no tracing these people, and we've had many bombings over the decades and the years as well. So in order to kind of close these loopholes or executive order people into safety, that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. And, on the very first page, you saw that this is now being considered a public health crisis. Guys, I told you at the beginning, COVID-19 is turning into the golden key to unlock any door that any representative wants to unlock when it comes to policy, legislation, and most of all, control over the people. So now we have this health crisis that's going hand in hand with the quote unquote pandemic that we are now in. So we're hearing similar things, and this is why people are finding it more acceptable to kind of get on the bandwagon with what they want to do as far as gun control and things like that go. So after all of this, we still have to talk about the Georgia voter fraud myth. And I know that you guys think that this is just like, oh my goodness, she's kind of going everywhere. But hear me out. Okay. So we have the COVID-19 agenda. And the COVID-19 agenda stated that we needed to be 6 feet apart. There's no way that we can be all crammed and go to a voting center. There's no way that we can all show up at one place and vote. So it created these issues where we had to kind of distance things, kind of spread things out. The legislators decided that they were going to extend voting times in order to space out the number of people in the precincts, or in the voter area in the counties. Sorry, words are escaping me today as usual. But we have all these people that are talking about, we need to separate people. We need to space it out and to continue moving forward, which is how we got into the election 2020. So they implemented drop boxes. They implemented a longer absentee period. They lowered the threshold for absentee ballots. They made everything as accessible as they could make it to the American people when it came to voting. And after they already hyped everybody up, being so afraid that everybody was going to die, they needed to come across as caring. So the only way to come across as caring is to give people the time to maintain proper social distancing. So that was the whole thought process behind the extra leniency in the 2020 elections. So we have now COVID-19 is a pandemic. You can't go to work. COVID-19 is a pandemic. You can't send your kids to school. You can't go to the grocery stores. You just can't do anything. Then you have COVID-19 is such a terrible thing that it's affecting now people with guns, and people with guns are starting to get crazy. And that's why we're having all these mass shootings, is because of the pandemic and people can't take it. Have you guys noticed the change in the mainstream media narrative? Have you noticed the things that they've been going with? Have you noticed that it doesn't look like it connects, but it all connects. I'm telling you, it all connects. So now, because everybody, is going crazy and they don't want to blame the lockdowns, they have to blame something else. That's where gun control comes in. And that's why it's linked to COVID-19. Which brings us back to the Georgia voter fraud myth. On your screen, you will see it's going to go back and forth. There's going to be CNN articles and what the CNN articles state when it comes to what the Georgia laws say. And then you're going to have the actual bill from the Georgia legislator. Guys, this bill is only 98 pages long. Okay, the COVID bill, last year's budget bill, we're talking like 1,600 pages plus. I mean, I can't even think right now because I know that I've said it before, but they were massive bills. I mean, massively large bills. And one of the biggest complaints that I've heard from normies is they don't have time to read the bill. Well, that's great, guys, because if you open up the actual bill and you read the summary, it's on the first page. It's only three pages. It might be 3 pages long. Don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure it's only 2 pages long. The summary will tell you everything that's in the bill and why they wrote it. That's it. Just read the 3 pages. If you're questioning or you need to know more information about a certain section, it's sectioned. There's subtitles. It will tell you what's in each section and will go into detail. Obviously, we don't have the time to read 98 pages of a bill on YouTube. You're not going to watch that, and I don't expect you to. So I'm going to briefly hit the CNN points, the talking points, and then tell you what the bill actually says. So let's go to the very first talking point. I apologize. I'm following along here on my computer. So, according to CNN Politics, the new Georgia elections law signed by Republican governor, just in case you didn't know, he's a Republican, Brian Kemp last week has prompted lawsuits from civil rights groups. which is what prompted me to do this video, guys. I didn't want to have to keep talking about this because I thought after they got Pinocchio'd and fact-checked to death that we weren't going to have to do this. But I saw a comment on Facebook that said, you know, Republicans aren't coming back with a good retort to these false narratives. Read the bill is not a good enough excuse. Damn, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's not a good enough excuse. And we do need to go into this bill and we need to verbatim pick out what their problem is and prove them wrong. So here we go. So, businesses are calling for action against the state. Republican proponents of the law say critics who accuse them of voter suppression are mischaracterizing both their intentions and key provisions of the law. That's true. They claim the law not only makes Georgia elections more secure, but it expands access to voting. True. These are true. So the first complaint that they have is increased state power over counties. Well, it's really funny. First off, let me just say, you're mad because the state is going to be in control of the county elections. Okay, so the counties are in the state. That makes sense. The state is ultimately the owners of the county. Okay, so what's HR 1? I'm just saying, we have a bill sitting right now in the Senate. It passed the House. Remember, it passed the House. It's sitting in the Senate, which I haven't checked on it in a couple days. It might have, died, but I'm not 100% sure. If you read that bill, it allows the federal government to take control over the entire country. And CNN's first claim is they're upset that the state is going to take power from the counties. Guys, I've been saying this for how long? I agree. We should have, ultimately, the counties should have the power. They know their residents better. They deal with their residents better. And they should have the power over their own elections. And then they should turn it into the state. But we have counties like DeKalb. We have counties like Fulton. We have counties like Chatham. And those counties are not doing what they are supposed to be doing. You had Chatham County this last election cycle. I believe the last 2 election cycles actually had to extend the voting hours because they couldn't come in and get their machines set up in time. I know. I sat in on their little meeting, on their little hearing with the election boards and listened to the Chatham County Election Board office blame the poll workers for not knowing how to come in and set up the Dominion machines. I listened to, people talk about how long it took them to get in and out of the voting precinct. Well, again, I work the polls, so I need to know, how hard is it to come in and press a button? You have a smartphone at home. There are some people who have disabilities and things like that. They can bring people to help them at the polls. So what is taking so long? Why can't you come in and get your vote done and get out? I don't think that we had a line more than 5 people during the entire day, during the entire election cycle. And election day was the only day we had a line. The only day that we had a line. And I understand there are people in different counties with different issues. I get it. But my problem is, then why aren't we splitting up those counties? Why aren't we then actually following the Constitution and giving voter representation per population and breaking down the precincts and breaking down the counties and breaking down the voter areas as per population? You know, we changed that law so long ago that we don't even know why we do it that way anymore. And now, funny story, we've got to come back around and actually do it. We have to, go back and say, oh, too many people live in this county and too many people live in that county. So we've got to split it into 2 different precincts. We've got to split it into 2 different areas. We've got to rezone the different areas. And then we have the problem of the poll workers. How many people are out there actually going to their precincts and getting a job? And what type of people are getting the jobs? Because I didn't talk to anybody really. They called me and they said, you want to be a poll worker? I said, yes, I want to be a poll worker. Your training starts this day. You came in, you filled out your paperwork, you went through the training, boom, you're a poll worker. what's it like for the poll watchers? I couldn't watch the polls because I was working the polls, but next year, I'd like to get in a little bit deeper. I'd like to do some of the counting. I'd like to do some of the poll watching. I'd like to get into those things to figure out who is actually working in those areas. So the only thing that this bill is actually stating is that we don't have that security on a county level. We need state oversight to make sure that everybody's doing exactly what Georgia law states that they need to do. You can't have drop boxes in Fulton County, but none in Chatham County. And then you can't have early voting for 3 weeks in Effingham County and then turn around and in Macon do something completely different. We have to be uniform across the board, and that's all this bill does is state, guys, we are going to do this across the board and we're going to do it uniformly. But the Democrats won't tell you that. So let's get into these drop boxes for a second, because I've had some major issues with these drop boxes. When I worked the polls, okay, there was, me, there was my poll manager. There were usually 2 or 3 gentlemen that worked the polls with us, and then 2 other women. So you've got 6 or 7, give or take, of us at the poll location. There are 2 assistant managers and 1 manager of the poll location. So when the ballots are counted at the end of the night, we don't even count them. We just collect them and put them into a box. But with that being said, we signed this little sheet of paper that states that we did not mess with those ballots. We did not destroy any of those ballots. We did not modify, manipulate, or in any way, shape, or form fix or remove or do anything to those ballots. The only people that touched those ballots were the voters. They voted, they put it into the machine, and all we did was take them, put them into a box, seal the box, and take it to the election boards. When we do that and we sign that paper, that's under penalty of perjury. Like, if we did something in the precinct that destroyed those ballots, our names are on that paper. It would, even if I didn't do it, I would be held responsible for it because my name is on that paper. Now, nobody really thought about it at the time, but with these mail-in ballots, again, like I said to you, where's the chain of command? We don't know who picked them up. We don't know when they picked them up. We don't know where they went when they were picked up. We don't have an escort, because when we take the ballots at the end of the night to the precinct to be counted, we have to have an escort. I can't take them by myself. Nobody knows what I would do with them. So you're adding another person into the equation in an effort to make it more secure. Another thing about these drop boxes, we never had drop boxes before COVID. So when the narrative comes out that you're trying to make it so that we can't vote, you took our drop boxes off of us. You took our drop boxes off of us. You've never had a drop box before. If you had an absentee ballot, you took it up to the precinct. You took it up there yourself, or you showed up on election day, or you didn't vote. I'm not saying don't vote. Okay, that's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is you have to pay attention and see beyond the scope of what you think is going on, because there's a whole big world out there. Not everybody is nice, not everybody is honest, and not everybody is in it together. To quote the famous quote of COVID, we're not all in this together. Some of us are in this to be against somebody else. So when they say, oh, well, it's illegal now to drop off grandma's ballot at the drop box, it's not illegal. It never was. You are more than welcome to go to grandma's house and take her absentee ballot and drop it off at the precinct yourself, which would be safer. You would know for sure, I put this into your hands. You're the counter of the ballots, and I'm good. My vote is secure. I made sure that it got there. Or grandma's vote is secure. I made sure that it got there. These boxes that they're giving you, this false hope, you don't know that. As a matter of fact, I read an article the other day that they found out in Texas that there was a woman who was switching Democratic voters to Republicans. How do you guys feel about that? This isn't just a Republican trying to shut out all Democrats and shut out all competition. This is integrity. the most lacking factor of American society at this point in time. We have no integrity as a society. We don't do the right thing when nobody's watching. When nobody's watching, we do what we want to do, and that's the problem. So when you allow this type of shadow over the election cycle, of course you're going to get feedback, and of course you're going to get static. Let's look at the claims in the past. So Democrats have claimed, in 2016 that there was some massive voter fraud, that there was foreign interference. That was their claim of election fraud, was foreign interference in the form of Facebook advertisements nonetheless. So you see campaign ads. My question always from the start is, what is a couple campaign ads between friends, and who cares who's really paying for it, because everybody drops a butt ton of money on campaigning. But you guys are still sitting here saying that that was fraud. That was fraud. That was fraud. No, that wasn't fraud. But when you have an actual scenario where you don't know if the people in your own country were tossing ballots out of the side of the mailbox, shredding ballots. We had a postal worker come out and be intimidated by the police to recant his statement. We still have ongoing litigation to this day right now that's going on in Maricopa County in Arizona, that they're finding people, more and more dead voters who voted, more and more people who voted from fake addresses. I don't think anybody's done any across the board voting comparisons to see if Jane Doe voted maybe in Georgia, maybe she voted in New York, maybe she voted in here. We don't know, because nobody's done that. And the only thing that we've done here in Georgia is the Secretary of the state, Brad Raffenspringer, did his own investigation and said, oh, well, we found a couple anomalies, but that was it, and let's keep it moving. But he's never addressed, and even this new voting bill does not address the absolute insanity of just taking a sacred vote and tossing it into a box and hoping, assuming, what do you guys want to call it? How do you know that it got there? Georgia didn't have any type of vote tracking system that I know of for absentee ballots. That was kind of like an afterthought. None of this stuff was thought up when COVID came into play. The only thing that was on people's minds was, let's keep people safe. Let's keep people safe. Let's keep people safe. And it was done on purpose. So, now that I'm done ranting about the chain of command, which is absolutely insane, I've talked to many different representatives. I've talked to Philip Singleton about this. I've talked to Neil Singleton, who's running for the 12th Congressional District here in Georgia. I've talked to Mac McGregor, who's running for Lieutenant Governor. I've talked to a whole bunch of different people about this and the chain of command on the drop boxes. Like, am I missing the boat on this? Am I blowing something out of proportion? And they assure me that I'm not. So I'm going to keep harping on this. We are going to keep harping on this. We are going to keep bringing this to people's attention, because chain of command is everything. If you can't prove at every point where those ballots were, who had access to them, and ensure me that they've gotten to where they need to go, that needs fixed. And the fact that we wrote into this piece of legislation, which nobody seems to be talking about either, we actually wrote emergency order powers into our Georgia election bill. I kid you not. And I actually I didn't call him out on it, but I said something to Philip Singleton about emergency powers being absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that we've actually written them into this bill turns my stomach. It makes me sick, and I don't like it. Executive orders need to go. We need to stop complying with executive orders. They are not law. They are not constitutional, and they cannot be enforced. Period. And stop. There is nothing past that. So let's get into this this limited early voting and what they say about the early voting. According to CNN, There was extensive media coverage of initial Republicans' proposals to eliminate or sharply reduce early voting on Sundays. When some black churchgoers participate in Souls to the Polls voting drives. This is something that Warnock has been on a mission from God about. Now, again, you guys know that I'm a Wiccan here in the Bible Belt of Georgia. I do not fit in, and I don't expect to. I don't understand this at all. I am a Reformed Byzantine Catholic. So when you sit here as a preacher, a pastor, a priest, a rabbi, any clergyman whatsoever, and tell me that in any way, shape, or form that it's a religious experience to vote, you need to vote on Sundays. Listen, my bibliography might be, and I know what that is. It's not what I'm referring to, but bear with me. My bibliography might not be all that great, but I'm pretty sure that Sundays were supposed to be reserved for the Lord. You were supposed to, and in my studies, I have found that Baptists in general tend to be in Sunday church all day, and they go to church on Thursdays, and they go to church on like Mondays, and then they do chorus practice on Tuesdays, and Wednesdays is something else. I mean, like, their whole lives revolve around the church. So when you say, well, God can take a pause because he wants to make sure that we get to the vote because we're black, or because we're religious, or because whatever. In my mind, I'm just going to throw this out there. It seems to me like you're perverting your religion, Mr. Warnock. It seems to me like you are conflating yourself as a false deity, as a false god, like you are the shepherd that are going to lead these people to the promised lands. And I thought you were supposed to be, just the guy that talked to God and gave that message to the flock and guided them with their problems and helped them actually see the light and kind of learn to love their neighbors, that thing, not God wants you to vote. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't religion in politics, because obviously I'm a Wiccan conservative and I talk about it all the time. But with that being said, I also know a little bit about other people's religions and what they preach in their mission message, if you will, for lack of a better word. So when you have a man who's a reverend, who's quite literally conflating some sort of religion with getting to the vote, or getting religion mixed in with the government, I think it's time to pump the brakes and just ask yourself, what really is this man saying? And I've been all over his Facebook feed, and I've got to say that there are some people starting to come around. They're starting to realize what he's saying is just pure conjecture. It's pure politics, and he's gunning for votes. Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's all he wants, is he wants your vote. So when we talk about the early day voting, early things, okay, guys, we're also comparing to the COVID election. Okay, the reason why we had so much time, why they drew this out, why they made it so long, is because of social distancing laws. Not laws. Oh God, no. Why did I say that? No. Because of social distancing mandates and things that they were doing. God, it's not a law. Please, it's not a law. But so that's why they did that. Now that Georgia has officially lifted the pandemic restrictions, I still don't think he's relinquished his emergency powers, Kemp, but we are lifted. The bans are lifted. Everything's lifted. We can go back to normal. So we don't need as much time. This isn't a poll. Like, okay, so when Rasputin, what's the biggest poll? Gallup polls, Rasputin, and there's another big one out there. When they do polls, they usually kind of say we're going to poll people from all these different areas. We're looking for, a big sample size, and we are going to do it from X date to X date. And they go out and they collect all their data, and then they compile all their data, and then they can come out with statistics and tell you different things based on the information that they have collected. That's not an election, guys. That's not how an election works. When you have a campaign cycle, and you guys, everybody hates campaign season because that's all you see is campaign ads, and they just bombard you 24/7 all the time, and it's just always constantly in your face, in your face, in your face, in your face. That's your kind of consideration period. That's your time to decide, do I like this person? Do I not like this person? Let me go look into their policies. Let me look into their background. Let me see what they're doing for the community. Let me see what they're doing, and kind of get all that information so that on voting day, you can make an educated decision, because it's one day. It's one day. You come in on one day, make your decisions, and go about your life. Okay? Nobody has time to be sitting here thinking about all the things that our representatives think about on a daily basis. That's why we have a representative government, so that we can go about our business in society having a general clue as to what is permissible to everybody and what is not permissible to everybody, and kind of move amongst society, and move freely amongst each other. When you're talking about making this a 2-week long, a 6-month long, a 5-month, at what point do you just then close the polls? How do you pick a date then to make a decision if oh my God, somebody's brother's mother's sister's little cousin isn't going to get to the polls on time because they were in Venezuela? Guys, I'm sorry. You have to be involved. You actually have to care. So you have to make the point to get where you need to be on time and know what you want to do when you get there. Which brings me to the shortened runoffs. I never really understood what a runoff was, besides, a tie. And when you're in a tie, I talked to a lot of the women at the precinct, a lot of people at the precinct, and these people have been doing this for years. This is my first year there. So again, I'm still learning. I still need to know lots of things, and, get information about stuff, and only so much is going to stay up in my brain at a time. But these runoffs, they don't need to be forever long either. Like, they're complaining. What did CNN say? The law significantly shrinks both the overall length of runoff campaigns and the early voting period for runoffs. So some context. It says Democrats won both of the U.S. Senate runoffs held in January 2021, which gave them control of the chamber. So CNN, are you saying that if they did not have the time to coerce their voters into voting, that they wouldn't have won? Is that what you're saying? Because that's pretty amazing. That's a heck of a claim right there. That, see, we had the time, and because we had the time, that's why we won. Get it? Do you get it? I don't agree with that whatsoever. Guys, if we're in a tie and you really want your candidate to win, you'll show up again, you will vote in the runoff, and your candidate will win the election. And if you don't show up, Republicans in Georgia, you know what happened. You know what happened. We didn't win. Now, I'm not condemning anybody for not showing up to the runoffs, because I don't think that it would have made a difference. I'm just going to say that. YouTube's going to ban me. But I really don't think it was going to make a difference whether we all showed up or not, because of things. But we'll leave that right there. So let's get back to the actual Georgia bill. So big changes to absentee ballots. Now you have to have a reason to have an absentee ballot. Okay, they're going to make you have an absentee reason for an absentee ballot. You're going to have to show identification to get said absentee ballot. I think they also decided in 2020, they just blanketed out these absentee ballots, assuming that nobody was going to want to show up in person due to COVID. So now they're not going to blanket them out. And apparently that's voter suppression. If they don't send you your own autographed voter card or ballot, then they're telling you don't show up to vote. That's like the black or white of that situation. And you know, again, we talk about these drop boxes and getting the votes, the absentee votes out to the precincts. So I mean, if you're not getting blanketed a ballot and there's no box to drop it off, are you still engaged in voting or are you not engaged in voting? I'm confused. So if it's easy for you, such as, a car warranty, when they send it to you in the mail and you don't have to think about it and you don't have to do it, at what point does that become coercion or just simply manipulating people into voting how you want them to vote? And we said this also in 2020 with all the blanketed absentee ballots. I'd like to know how many actually came back to precincts, because whenever they came, if they were blanketed an absentee ballot, they had to bring it to the precinct. So how many people actually showed up? I know that we ended up with a few, don't get me wrong, but what happened to the other absentee ballots? And people have been trying to explain this to me. Guys, if they get the absentee ballot in the precinct, they verify the outside. The outside had the signature on it, the post markings or whatever, and that was the only thing that needed to be verified, to the best of my knowledge. So they needed to verify the signatures on the shell of the ballot. Once that signature was verified, you take the ballot out of the shell, you put the shell over here, it's been verified, that person voted, and then you take their ballot, because it's supposed to be secret, so you don't want to look at the ballot and say, oh, John Doe voted for Biden, okay, put that over there. Once those ballots are separated from those shells, okay, and everything's being counted, how do you know which ballot belonged to which voter who could have showed up in person to vote? Now, the only reason I bring this up, I'm going to tell you one more time. We had 2 voters who showed up on election day. They were blanketed absentee ballots. They popped up in my iPad system as having already completed a ballot. The person told me no, they did not turn in their ballots. So we called the election boards. The election board, I don't know, I wasn't privy to that conversation. I'm just the assistant manager. My manager called. She allowed both of those voters to vote in the precinct in person, under the understanding that those 2 votes that were already sent would be null and void. My question is, we had tallies starting from Georgia before the polls closed. So that means that they did start counting absentee ballots prior to the polls closing. I get it. We all want to be done at the same time uniformly, and we need the numbers and we need them now. Cool, fine. I'm not really even mad about that. What I'm mad about is the fact that now that you've separated this mail-in ballot from its shell, its owner, how do you know which ballot to void if that person were to show up on voting day? And nobody wants to address this issue. Oh, well, they didn't separate the ballots. Okay. So if they didn't separate the ballots, how did they count them? How did we have a running tally as the day was going? I'm confused. Guys, it doesn't work like that. And if you are counting ballots and you're not separating them from their shells, then you're violating somebody's right to a secret ballot. So now you have the person's name and who they voted for right in front of you. Which one is it? It can't be both. It cannot be both. They can't be separating ballots and then nullifying ballots as the day progresses if this person shows up in person to vote and you allow them to vote in person. And you can't be separating shells and nullifying votes. And if you're not doing those things, then why are you looking at votes? If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. But these are just the stops on the logic train to get an answer for this reasonable doubt that we all have when it comes to the 2020 elections. Now we're beyond that. Now we're moving into the future. Our state, Georgia, has decided to put some of these concerns into writing and kind of squash the issues and the things that we've been questioning, even though apparently some of us still have some questions that haven't been answered. Okay? This brings me into this food and drink issue. Okay? So now we're talking about getting arrested, or they think that they're going to get charged with something for giving water or food to their friends while they're waiting in line. Remember, they had really long wait times and they're waiting in line, and apparently nobody's adult enough to say, should maybe get a snack before I go. I'm diabetic. I haven't drank any water today. I should probably take a water bottle with me just in case. Maybe I should just, leave the kids with the babysitter instead of dragging them into the polls, and knowing that I'm going to wait a little bit longer, knowing that all this stuff's going on. No. No. It has nothing to do with the fact that we don't want you to eat and drink at the polls, okay? Nothing to do with that at all. It has to do with campaigning, all right? So if you're going to sit here on the Democratic side of the stick and say that Republicans don't want us to vote and they're trying to keep us away from the polls and they're trying to and there's all these different suppression narratives out there, how would you feel if a Republican came up to you in line and handed you a MAGA water bottle? How would you feel if somebody came and started questioning who you were voting for? Here, have a piece of cake. Vote for my guy. And you got a little cookie with Trump's face on it. How'd you feel about that? Would you be talking about you're not getting food and water in line waiting for your vote? No, you'd be pretty pissed off, to say the least, because you now feel like you're being coerced into changing your vote, right? So this was another thing that went around the internet with all different types of videos and ads, and people come on down and vote. You can get registered for a $50 gift card. Come on down and vote. We'll give you this water bottle. Come on down and vote. At what point are we worried about forcing people who don't want to be involved in the process to do something that they don't want to do? Apparently that's never crossed anybody's mind, because COVID rules are still in effect. So now we don't even have a government that's telling us what to do. We have private businesses that are telling us what to do. And it doesn't stop because it's an election season, and it doesn't stop because there's COVID, and it doesn't stop because of any of this. So you have a group of people who legitimately want to abuse people to get their votes. They will tell them that they're not smart enough to get an ID. They will tell them that they, live too far away from their precinct. So, somebody has to give them an absentee ballot to take it to the precinct for them on their behalf. We talked about this before, guys. Even your own family members. What haven't we learned? What haven't we, since 2016, what haven't we learned? We've watched friends get into it over politics. We've watched family members get into it over politics. So if grandma was a Trump supporter and the grandson came in and said, "Yeah, grandma, I'll take your absentee to the polling place. I'll drop it off for you." And then the grandson just takes it and throws it in the shredder, or he throws it away, or the mailman misplaces it. We don't know. We don't know. That's why we can't treat voting like a, somebody suggested to me that we do blockchain voting. HR1 had all that technological voting in there. Let's register online. Let's do it this way. Let's re-register online. Voting, we have checked out of voting for so long that now they're just going to turn it into an automated system. They're just, you're a registered Democrat, so we're just going to check all the boxes for you because that's what you're registered as. Who cares if you want to change your opinion? Who cares if you want to vote independent? Who cares if you want to do any? Doesn't matter, because you're registered, and that's the way that they want you to vote. And that's the way they're going to get you to vote. And if you don't agree with them and you don't believe them, they're going to tell you all the reasons why everybody else is bad. And they're not going to tell you that really the reason why they're pushing this and the whole reason behind all of this is because it keeps them in power. Because it keeps them on top. It keeps their agenda moving forward. And, again, we've had these people talk about these bills. How many people heard of, Ossoff talking about how terrible the bill was before it was signed? I don't remember hearing anything about that. I don't remember hearing anything from Warnock too much about that. I'd still like to know what's going on with his investigation in Stacey Abrams. And speaking of Stacey, this whole mess has really screwed Georgia, because with the MLB All-Star Game leaving us, where does that leave your minority business owners? Where does that leave your black farmers? Where does that leave anybody in the city for any of these events? Will Smith is pulling out his production of whatever he was working on. I don't know. I don't follow Hollywood, so I apologize. But he's pulling out of his movie. He's pulling his movie out of Georgia. How does that affect our citizens? How does that affect our economy? How does that directly affect the people that you're supposed to be advocating for? Again, guys, this is just absolute virtue signaling. This is absolute, I want to be right, look at me, and everybody else is wrong. It's classic projection. So I hope that everybody decides to read the actual bill about the voter laws, why they were changed, what they were before. Understand that a lot of things were changed due to COVID, and they weren't legally changed either, which is the whole other can of worms with the 2020 election. When you have emergency powers that a tyrant, a dictator, a king can come in at any time and poo-poo his people and poo-poo the law and poo-poo everybody else, this is what you're going to get. So, at the end of the day, guys, just do your homework, understand past, present, and future, and please just get out there, and talk to people, educate people. God, we need so much education in this country. It's not even funny. And if Facebook pushes back on you, push back on them. I'm gonna be posting here to YouTube for as long as YouTube will let me. If not, I think that I'm going to go to Rumble. So if you lose me on YouTube, go to Rumble. Excuse me. Like, share, subscribe. I don't talk about it a lot, but excuse me. I'm almost at 100 followers, so I'm super excited about it. If I could get that 100th follower, I'd be great. Nice, even number there. But, I don't really post on a regular basis. I do kind of come and go. I'm very flaky. So I apologize so much for that. You can hear my dogs barking in the background. This video kind of took me 2 days to put together. So I hope that you enjoy the content. Share what you like with your friends. If you don't like it, hit the dislike button. Doesn't bother me a bit, guys. So with all that being said, I will catch you on the next one.